I was mentioned, my name is Omar Tour, and I'm with Digital Management, Inc. In order for me to, kind of give something back to the company that paid for my trip here, so I'm going to do the typical quick 30-second slide about the company. We're a $250 million company with over 1,400 employees. We're based out of the Washington, D.C. area with a global presence and focusing on a number of areas: strategic consulting, infrastructure services, application development, and more recently, mobility solutions, cybersecurity, and big data. Here's a quick snapshot of our customers, the various industries, and really the focus of today is going to be government. And one of the distinguishing factors here is our presence at all of the cabinet-level agencies, which does allow us sort of a breadth and scope in terms of understanding what the ecosystem within the federal space looks like. So I thought of many ways of doing this, and really in order for me to convey or sort of get you to have an appreciation of what we've done with Liferay, it's important to understand the federal grants management line of business. With a quick show of hands, how many folks have heard of grants management, even as a line of business within the federal government? Okay, well, that's great. For those who haven't, if I had to really describe it, everything you see around you from the federal procurement process, there are really two lines of business. One of them is the grants management line of business. It's a $410 billion line of business within the federal government. A lot of what you see around you, unaware, is really supported by federal grants. If you step outside of this building, you'll see a construction project. That is most likely funded by a federal grant. If you have kids who are headed to college, if they're taking a scholarship, it's most likely funded through a federal grant. The grants management line of business is something that every federal agency supports and is required to support. And it's a fairly lengthy process, and where grants.gov, as the federal portal fits in, is within the green areas. Its sole purpose is when the federal government or Congress or the White House identifies a program, and I'll give you an example that is more relevant to the recent times. For example, the Affordable Care Act. That, for a large majority of it, is funded through a federal grant. It all starts off with a bill that says we want to support X, Y, and Z program, and then it's up to the agencies to make sure that they publicize that program to the public and that the public applies for those programs. A lot of what we do today would not happen if people don't apply for those programs. When you talk about cancer research, when we talk about Fulbright scholarship programs or public diplomacy efforts. Grants.gov serves two purposes. It allows people to find a grant online, and number two, it supports the process of applying for those grants and then disseminating them as a broker to the federal agencies that actually support that program. The role and function of grants.gov, it is ultimately a White House initiative, and its purpose is singular: provide a common website, one single portal that will be used by every federal agency to disseminate grant information. The program started back in 2002, and at the present time is the only way to truly apply for a federal grant. In terms of metrics, and these will be fairly relevant in our times, it is the one-stop federal electronic portal. It is supported by all 26 federal agencies. In terms of statistics, over 300,000 applications are submitted through grants.gov annually. And it receives, the actual website itself, receives around 4 million page views a week. It is the fourth most visited website within the federal space, and we send well over 1 million email notifications through the website in terms of alerts and notifications to the general public. To set the stage for the next 20 minutes, and I am kind of keeping an eye on the audience here, so if I see anyone dozing off or I start to get a little boring, I do have what I call YouTube cat videos lined up. They generally do wake up people, and also this is my go-to for any technical questions that I cannot answer. Okay. So a couple of considerations as we talk about Liferay, government portals, etc. First is the actual ecosystem of grants.gov. So if I can engage you in a sort of academic discussion, the federal government, one of the things we enjoy is a lot of R&D work that is done on the commercial side. So eventually when we get a product, we know it's been put through its rigors through the commercial vendors and the commercial market. And I'll tell you how that ties into Liferay in a second. The other thing is, in the last 13 years, and I've been supporting the government for well over 15, in the last 13 years, after the dot-com boom, there was a proliferation of solutions and services and different type of technologies. And one of the things that I think was a similar case on the commercial side, as the government started developing solutions, their organizations became very complex. They became very hybrid. It was a hodgepodge of multiple solutions. You could have the same office with a .NET product and a Java product and the Oracle product and the Microsoft product. The last 10 years was really a moment where a lot of investment was made in new technologies, so to vet them out. And we're at a point right now where the one focus for the government is standardization. Okay, we've had our fun in the last 10 years. We've had a lot of toys and tools, but now we have to start moving towards a standardized architecture, a standardized solution for one and only one purpose, a hybrid, a sort of an office with a hybrid set of solutions does drive the operating cost significantly. So in an effort to start reducing the operations and maintenance costs, they're really focusing on standardizing on architectures and solutions. So as far as grants.gov go and where Liferay fits in, there were really three main components that we as Digital Management Inc. were asked to address. Number one is collaboration enablement. When grants.gov was first built in 2002, we did not have Facebook, we did not have Twitter, Google. We are dealing with a far more educated audience at this point. So we have to come up with ways to allow our applicant community to collaborate with each other to go after one grant. And I'll get into that a little further. Number two is the enhanced user experience. And we really have Apple to thank for that. I mean, they lifted our expectations on what and how we engage our devices and systems and solutions. So an enhanced user experience is really one of the focuses we have for grants.gov. And last but not least is modernizing our entire application infrastructure. One of the things I did want to mention here, where do vendors like Liferay benefit from engaging government entities like grants.gov? By the time we're done installing your product, we will have made our own investments in meeting a lot of compliance standards. By that, I mean FISMA compliance, security, 508 compliance, making an application more accessible. Even since we deployed Liferay within the grants.gov environment, we've had to put a number of solutions on top of Liferay in order to sort of meet that gap. And that's one thing that we're hoping to contribute back to the Liferay community as well. And we see that across the board as well with various technologies where there's the commercial flavor and there's the government flavor of that same product. And that's where we want to also contribute to in working with Liferay. I know it's a busy slide, but the slide decks will be available. But the core message here is grants.gov as an environment is fairly complex and fairly large. These here represent the functional modules within grants.gov. And then our physical architecture, and then all of our integration points. What I want you to note in the integration points is the number of stakeholders that we have to engage with. We have a global audience. When we try to do anything on grants.gov, I call it trying to fix the bullet train while it's moving. You don't have time to stop at a station and fix it. We have integrations with Dun & Bradstreet, so if you're an applicant who's trying to apply for a grant, we validate your credentials. We validate you as a company, as an individual. And then we have the grantor agencies, which would represent the 26 agencies that have programs, and then the applicant community. What's also interesting to note is we have an entire community of what we call the S2S community users. This is an industry, government partnership between universities like Duke, MIT, Stanford, where they have such a large amount of grant programs that we've developed specific interfaces for them that allow them to apply for large volumes of grant without having to ever go to the grants.gov website itself. What you have here is Liferay. And Liferay, our goal is eventually to take Liferay as it's implemented now and slowly have it bleed and become the standard architecture for grants.gov. Collaboration enablement, same thing. It's a fairly busy slide, but the message I want to sort of convey over here is, if there's a program, for example, the government decides that we want to fund an opportunity to research communicable diseases in a foreign country, there's a lot of collaboration that has to happen for that to occur. We'll have to get Department of Justice involved, NIH involved. We would have even the Education Department involved. All those agencies have to collaborate together. The current grants.gov environment does not lend itself to that level of collaboration, and that's one of the things where we've now implemented within Liferay, which is the concept of microsites and communities of interest that allow parties, we bring them together, we play Match.com, allow them to collaborate with each other, figure out, who is the best to go after a certain piece of work, and then eventually apply for it. And then using Liferay built-in capabilities around the blog, document management, and the discussion board in order to bring that communication together. As we look, one of the business needs was an enhanced user experience. This is a snapshot of our sitemap. We had to take a concerted look at each and every page within our website and determine which one will sit within the Liferay umbrella and which one is going to sit as a separate page, which will be integrated, what will be separated, etc. The blues represent all the pages that we integrated within the Liferay umbrella. And the other pages in the gray are custom Java applications, which at a future time will be integrated, but they will still reside within Liferay. And then this kind of serves for our roadmap for grants.gov as we look at future enhancements and where they'll fit into our overall sitemap. We took a templated approach to our information architecture. And what that essentially means is, and you can't really see it here, we've identified with logos here what is still a custom Java component and what sits within Liferay. And the templated approach allowed us to really holistically look at grants.gov and determine what the level of integration will be with Liferay. And this is a process that we duplicated for every functional module within the site. Last but not least, and this is where rubber starts to meet the road. How do you build a system where you can't touch the end users? We have a global audience at any given moment of around 4 million people that are visiting the website. So we had to kind of come up with a unique way of prototyping the solution out for them. I'm going to switch over to a live site here. So we ended up hosting a page online and implemented a global partner testing program, which included not only universities and educational institutes, but public users and also the federal agencies. And as we started to prototype our Liferay solution, we came up with first what we call the low-fidelity wireframes, which were clickable prototypes of the site that allowed you to get a sense of what the site would look like. And in order for them to do a comparison between the old site and the new site, we would put links at the bottom that showed them what the old site was so they could kind of switch back and forth and do a comparison. From the low-fidelity diagrams, we moved on to what we called our high-fidelity wireframes. These were wireframes that had a lot more flavor to them and a lot more engagement to them. And then one of the processes we engaged in was allowing people to click through the site and give us feedback as they did their partner testing. All of what you see here is within a Liferay template. And let me kind of delve a little bit deeper into that as well. So our LifeRay templates, again, allowed us to standardize our entire site with the banner, the top navigation, the global navigation, and then the search. We also, like I mentioned, had an entire prototype site that was accessible to the public. In fact, now what we've done is every software release we do of grants.gov, everyone's allowed to look at it. If you go to the site I just had up, you can see the next version of grants.gov that is coming down the pipeline. And then, more importantly, and just spend a little bit of time on that, we saw an enormous cost saving by moving towards LifeRay. And one of the models that we've also tried to institute within the site is moving towards open source. So using LifeRay to manage our content management system, there was a cost saving not just in the licensing cost from the old tool that we have, and I won't go ahead and mention that old tool, but also the labor that was required. We went from having to hire professional services where they would charge upwards of $300 an hour to do simple content updates to now the average Joe. Our government now maintains this website. They're able to update the blog and update the content as they see fit. So we kind of removed ourselves from that process. Okay. Another thing that we definitely took advantage of was the modular architecture approach. As we started to build solutions, specific enhancements for the website, we had a number of options that were available to us. We could have out-of-the-array LifeRay widgets. We had third-party plugins. We had the marketplace, and also with the option of custom coding J2EE components. This is an example of how we can have a hybrid approach in order to do a single solution. This is our high-functioning homepage, and we have at least 4 different types of implementations here. We have LifeRay, we have custom, we have third-party, and we have tools from the marketplace. So this is a snapshot of our old homepage, fairly flat. In fact, I mean, it was over 10 years evolved into a hybrid of technologies. There were at least 17 different solutions that went into the old website. With the new website that we rolled out, this kind of, again, shows you the various levels of integration. We had custom components built in, and then we had the LifeRay components, and then third-party through our Solar Search. A large part of our effort was spent on really making search smarter. I mean, that's the bread and butter of grants.gov. We've got to take grant programs and help people find those programs. So we went from a fairly 1, 2, 3-step wizarded approach search process to what we call the federated search. And this was, again, a LifeRay and a Solar implementation. And as far as I'm aware, at the present time, there has, I mean, we can do the survey, but I'll do it later. At the present time, there is no other implementation that comes close to the way we've done faceted search on grants.gov. In fact, when we were trying to build this, I mean, we spent months. I mean, we were on different websites reading white papers. I had my own wife, whenever she did shopping on Macy's.com, to tell me how she liked the search experience. And then we took all that back into building a search experience. What's unique about this is it's almost like when you go to, say, Home Depot and you want to order furniture, and you enter in a department. And if you pick the wrong department and you'll come back with search results of 0, you can assume maybe they don't carry that product. What we've done on this website is if you're applying for a federal grant, for example, and you wanted to apply for a grant with solar panels, we will in real time tell you the number of results within each of the various facets. And you don't have to keep on going back and forth between a result and then hit filter. It gives you the results real time. So you can look at a grant opportunity, and then you can come to the bottom here and notice, well, agriculture has 1 grant. Commerce has 8 grants. And if you change any of the facets, it will change these numbers real time. And that was a huge boon for the grant community. We've seen, at least on the search pages themselves, the usage increased by 98%, where folks are no longer having to know what they're applying for. They can be directed to specific grant programs. Okay. forgot where I was. That really is the crux of my presentation, and I believe I have 10 minutes to spare. We can do cat videos, or I can take some questions.
Can you tell us a little bit about the timeline and the development effort in terms of team size, and perhaps did you have to do some convincing on their part for open source?
Okay, so like 4 questions. So let's start. First was the development timeline. We were actually surprised at the development timeline ourselves. It took about 6 months to go soup to nuts from the old site to the new site. The actual development cycle itself was about 6 months. What really took more iterations was the prototyping, the actual coming up with the requirements. The government came to us with just one requirement: make us a high-functioning homepage and improve our search. So we had to take that and then expand that into, something that they wanted. But soup to nuts, it took about 6 months. And we had to tie the release of this site to the Affordable Care Act because a number of the grant programs that support that act were going to be actually hosted on this site. You had another question about convincing. No, there is very little convincing as far as moving towards open source that I've seen so far. A lot of it comes down to 2 things. Is it secure? That's one thing. Is it secure? That's the only question that's really, truly been asked about moving towards open source product. How secure is it? Because as far as the cost goes, that speaks for itself. So, no, there wasn't a lot. In fact, we've migrated a number of things towards open source. We abandoned the Google search appliance and we moved towards Solr. We went from our percussion tool to Liferay for content management. We're moving from the Oracle LDAP to Open LDAP. And one of the things that open source is beneficial, it does reduce our operating costs overall because it allows us to really customize a solution far better than dealing with a black box environment, which is what we often know with some stronger cost products out there. That was it? Okay.
Who was that?
Development team size, about 6 developers.
I was wondering if you could talk a little more about your decision to use Solr. Like what made you decide to use it, and what benefits have you seen from using it as opposed to the built-in search?
Okay. You have my contact information. I hope you can also reach out to me and I can give you a better... We did do a business needs analysis on Solr. And eventually it came down to one thing, which was Solr is a lot more widely used within the federal government. And number 2, it has a much larger community around it. And it integrates with a lot more open source products out there. So that was the biggest thing with moving towards Solr. Technically speaking, it's been, from what I've gathered from my technical team, a lot easier to implement than Google. So, and it does allow a lot more customization in terms of faceted searching. You just can't do that on Google, but it does allow you to kind of really expand the search environment. Also, it's rated a FISMA moderate high solution, so it meets all the regulatory standards for even DoD for implementation and security. But I can give you the case study we did on that. It was your taxpayer dollars. So, yes, sir.
Did your team take over the healthcare.gov?
Did we, or what was the question? Oh, can you? Well, I mean, talk to your congressman. No, I mean, I have my own thoughts on that, but I unfortunately can't say that in a public setting. But it's not an easy implementation, and I can share my own experience from grants.gov's perspective. We have a number of downstream systems that we have to work with, okay, in order. So if you're an applicant, you have to get validated through another system, and then it comes to our system. If there's a problem with any of those lower-level systems, people still come and scream at us. We can't tell them it's another system that's having the problem. So I think maybe that's one pain that I may share with the current vendor, is that the number of integration points required for systems like this.
Hi. I was wondering if there is a phase 2. Is this part of a
Yes.
of a rollout? And if so, what were any experiences that you had during this release that might have adjusted your plans for going forward in that roadmap?
So I was wondering who would ask that question. This is a much larger roadmap for modernizing the infrastructure. So LifeRay was one component, and now we're going to really move into the next phase. Call it a lessons learned. The biggest challenge we've had on this is user account management, is moving a massive database of almost 1.2 million users and migrating them towards LifeRay. We would have users that have almost 30, 40, 50, 200 accounts on the system because they represent multiple federal agencies. We have not integrated the UAM component with LifeRay yet, and that's our next major release of LifeRay. In fact, if you go to that site that I showed you, we've already put together a prototype of what the next phase of the site would look like. User access management, so that's our next major implementation. The second component of that roadmap is grants.gov is built very heavily on the Adobe framework. So all of the forms that applicants have to fill out, they are Adobe Live forms that they fill out. We are now exploring moving away from Adobe or either enhancing Adobe and moving towards enhanced web forms. And LifeRay is under consideration where are there any built-in features within LifeRay that will allow us to move hundreds of online Adobe forms towards a more of a mobile-friendly web form instead. One of the limitations that we have on grants.gov is that we have to operate for the lowest common denominator. Lowest common denominator. The user we have to think about often is the Indian tribe on a reservation somewhere that has to open up a solar panel and then go online to apply for a grant. That is an actual scenario. And those are the type of scenarios we have to think about when we have such a diverse audience. So, but I'd be glad to discuss the larger roadmap for you. We're in year 1 of a 3-year modernization effort.
Can you briefly talk about the load statistics, if or maybe more like a peak load, or if you had any CDN on the top of LifeRay, or were users directly hitting the LifeRay instances?
I'll let you take you to YouTube cat videos at this point. Can I actually discuss that question with you offline? But your question is on statistics of performance metrics, or? So short answer, yes. We did do performance testing on LifeRay, and I don't have that data readily available. I will say this, that we vastly underestimated our, the number of licenses, the number of machines, the servers that we had for this. And we've had to actually go through a process of increasing the number of instances to support this. But I wouldn't say that was more of a function of LifeRay as it was when you release the site and it's better than before, you get a lot more drive-by traffic. And that is what we didn't. We had built this to a peak usage of the old website, not to the peak usage of the anticipated website. But so far, the instances have remained fairly stable. The challenges we have really is we did not implement LifeRay on a Tomcat environment. We implemented it within a WebLogic environment. And that has presented some very unique challenges, and we're actively working with LifeRay to actually mitigate. We found actually a number of solutions that we've contributed back to them for how to implement LifeRay in a WebLogic environment. But that, I think, is really what's driving our performance issues right now. So.
So a couple things. Almost all of our content is on private pages, so you have to log in order to get to almost everything in our site. And second of all, we're going through an upgrade right now where we're moving off of an old CMS system onto LifeRay. There are a couple of things that I saw on your slides for feedback, where you gave a URL of the previous version of the site, and you also were asking for their feedback. Is that an out-of-the-box module, or did you use some custom things to provide that?
Short answer, yes. I mean, it was an out-of-the-box module we used from Liferay. Liferay actually comes integrated with Jira, our help ticketing system. So when we got feedback, Liferay was able to, we were able to just generate Jira tickets for us, or our trouble tickets. So that kind of component really helped as well. We had and I don't know if I can demo that here, but on our prototype pages, we had a feedback section at the bottom. And if you fill that out, and that came right out of Liferay, if you fill that out, it opened up a ticket on our side for feedback. And yes, same thing on our side. We have a public side, and then we have a private side. But not sure what the question was around that, but... Would those things work on the private section? Yes. Okay. Yes, absolutely. I mean, if they didn't, we just wasted a lot of money.
Thank you.